Okay, members. Thank you. Mr Chris Little has given notice of an urgent oral question to the Minister of Education. I would remind members that if they wish to ask a supplementary question, they should rise continually in their places. The member who tabled the question will be called automatically to ask a supplementary. Clerk, please read the question.
To ask the Minister of Education for an update on the advice he has provided to schools in relation to coronavirus.
And I call the Minister of Education.
Although primarily the issue of the tackling coronavirus is a health issue, my department is leading on the issue of relevant and appropriate advice and guidance to schools and education partners provided by both DOH and PHA. The Department of Education is advising parents and schools to keep up to date with the Public Health Agency guidance on COVID-19, and information is available on the PHA website. And indeed, in terms of that advice, we have also, in any contact with schools, been giving the links to that. If a school has any concerns in respect of either suspected or confirmed cases of coronavirus, they should first at instance contact the NHS 111 helpline. More specifically, on the 27th of February, I personally wrote to all school principals and education sector partners, enclosing the link to the PHA website, which is updated as the situation develops, and have emphasised the importance of monitoring the website regularly. I've encouraged schools to follow the guidance, in particular the need to practice good hand hygiene amongst staff and pupils, and reiterated PHA are available to speak to individual schools, which they've offered to do, who may have specific concerns in relation to COVID-19. And indeed, I think they have also offered advice in terms of any levels of risk assessment. Including this in this email were the updated Chief Medical Officer advice and linked to the Government UK latest advice and guidance. And I also had the opportunity to speak to the Chief Medical Officer whenever the first issue arose. My department continues to communicate with our education sector partners, schools and education settings, using existing communication links, and has issued PHA schools advice leaflet and self-isolation advice leaflet to the education sector groups. I've also ensured that the PHA website is prominently placed on the DE website. Can I say very specifically, earlier today, given the change in position that was outlined last night by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, my department has issued an update to all schools highlighting the change in that advice travel to areas of Northern Italy. And for those who haven't seen that advice, it is that unless there is essential travel, the advice from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office is that those areas which have been quarantined in Northern Italy, they are not advising people to go to. The welfare, health and safety of pupils and staff is paramount, and to myself and my departmental officials, in collaboration with the Department of Health and PHA, we continue to monitor what is an evolving situation, and will update schools and education settings both where appropriate and as soon as practically possible once there is any change to the situation.
And I call Chris Little to ask a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for providing an update to the Assembly with regards to his advice on schools in relation to coronavirus containment. Does the Minister accept that there are school leaders across Northern Ireland who feel that they have been passed from pillar to post in order to get clear guidance, particularly with regards to pupil travel to areas affected by coronavirus? And can he assure this Assembly that schools will have a direct contact with an appropriate person to seek up-to-date advice with regards to any and all pupil travel of that nature? And can he also advise the Assembly what contingency planning is taking place to maintain education provision should it be necessary to consider school closures?
The issue in terms of contingency planning, we're working with officials to see what is appropriate, because this is a fairly moving situation. I think CCEA, for instance, are developing their work in terms of if school exams are hit as part of that. Member mentions about clear guidance. I think there was an issue, I know at least with one school on day one with regard to the PHA, but actually says about a single point. It is actually vitally important that there is a single point of information, and that is actually what has happened in terms of the advice. We have said that in terms of the health advice, that PHA is the single point of advice, and that is where we're advising people to put it. It's not my place or the department's place to give an interpretation of other people's advice, or indeed, potentially what would be worse, provide contradictory advice. As regards travel, we have also made it very clear that the travel advice that schools should get is directly from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, which is a single point of advice. If we get conflicting advice on travel, if we get conflicting advice on hygiene, that would be something that would be both irresponsible and dangerous. It is also the case that while there is the direct advice of the NHL's helpline, the PHA have made this very publicly clear, and indeed the Chief Medical Officer has done a number of contacts with schools where those have happened, and indeed has done a conference call with school principals so that that single piece of advice is there, so they're able to answer directly the questions. As we move ahead, the responsible action must be to maintain a single piece of advice and a single point of advice so that there is not confusion out there, so there's not contradictory positions.
I call Gary Middleton.
Mr Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his statement on this very serious issue of coronavirus.